we start by seeing Nick the Wolf in a dialogue section like Forces usually has. The section is only prompted with a ... and level 1 appears, Enemy HQ. In this level, Nick the Wolf starts with dialogue saying, "Alright, time to get some intel." As he goes through the level fighting Badniks, we hear Eggman alert his troops, saying that Nick the Wolf is blasting his way through Metropolis, and that someone needs to stop him. Nick happily says that Eggman should have went further to lengths if he wanted to stop him from entering the city. He should have gotten better robots to try and stop him rather than these egg enforcers. Nick easily passes through the goal and says that he hopes the info he's looking for is still on the Egghead. We see the next level appears on the map, but it's a boss that isn't just called versus insert name here, it's just titled Infinite Chase. As you open the level, you get a dialogue section where Nick the Wolf says that he hopes that there's information on the Chaos Emeralds here. He grunts and says that there's no info. However, as he keeps looking, he notices that there's another file that interests him. He looks at the file labeled Orbital Prison, and in that file, he learns that Sonic is being held prisoner there. Nick says that he's got to get this information to Knuckles as soon as he leaves Metropolis. However, another character appears as he's about to leave. It's Infinite the Jackal, asking Nick where he's going. Nick says that he was just leaving, and Infinite says, "Sorry, I can't let you leave with that information. I'll have to destroy you." Nick says that it'll be hard to catch him since he's a mercenary who specializes in fighting Eggman. Infinite says that he's a mercenary too, the ultimate mercenary, made stronger by the powers given to him by Eggman. Nick says that this is going to be tough. We enter the level, and it starts with Infinite giving you a clear opening, but when you go to attack, Infinite hits you with a strong attack, sending Nick the Wolf flying away towards the exit. Nick says, "Okay, a fight with this guy will end badly." Well, it's as they say, can't beat him. Get the heck out of here! The level consists of you running away from Infinite as he tries to attack you with illusions. Later, we get into a more open version of the stage, more reminiscent of the Avatar character's version, where it's covered in infinite colossuses that destroy you as you run away. Meanwhile, Infinite is bombarding you with attacks as well. The whole time, however, Infinite has a boss bar that doesn't go down when you attack him. It goes down the further away you run, showing just how outclassed our wolf friend is. As Nick gets close to escaping, one of the Infinite Giants takes a swipe at him, at which point you have to follow up with a quick time event by pressing a button just at the right time to block the attack with Chaos Shield. After this, Nick the Wolf makes it to the goal and escapes. We go into a cutscene where Nick continues to use his hover skates to run away from Infinite, but Infinite passes Nick and says that he's had enough playing around with his food. The two of them fight, resulting in Infinite firing a beam of energy from the Phantom Ruby, and Nick the Wolf uses Chaos Stab to counter it. The attacks collide and explode. When the dust clears, Infinite sees no one. He says that he must have atomized Nick. He contacts Eggman and says that Nick the Wolf has been dealt with. Eggman tells Infinite to be as thorough as possible, saying that there can be no mistakes here. He's already got a different wolf to deal with while he already can't handle this one. Infinite tells Eggman that he's pretty sure Nick has been atomized, and Eggman tells Infinite to make sure. He can't let the information he has get to the Resistance. Infinite nods and says that once Eggman's mechs arrive to help, he'll use them to search. We see that Nick is hiding under some debris, and then, as Infinite hangs up, he skates away, taking a sigh of relief that he wasn't spotted that whole time. In a dialogue section, Nick contacts Knuckles and tells him that Sonic is alive and being kept somewhere called the Orbital Prison. Knuckles says that that's great and that Nick should get some rest. Nick says that he wants to help save Sonic, but Knuckles tells Nick it'd be best for him to get some rest and for him to check up on Cream. Nick gasps and says that Knuckles is right and that he's gotta hurry back. We go into a separate dialogue conversation. Nick seems to arrive back at Cream and Vanilla's house and asks how everyone's doing. Cream says that they're doing alright, but that she wishes she could be more help. Nick says that he wishes so too, to which Vanilla interjects and says that Cream is not going to be putting herself in danger on just any mission. Nick apologizes and says that he'd like to get some rest for the day. Vanilla acknowledges this and tells him to get some rest. Another level appears on the map. Level 3, Sunset City Ruins. We go into yet another dialogue conversation where Nick asks Gemerald if he touched his equipment, to which Gemerald says no. Nick says that it looks like there's some sort of space-time distortion in Sunset City. Cream says that that doesn't sound great, to which Gemerald asks if that could have been because of Eggman, to which Nick says it doesn't seem fully related to Eggman's new power source. Nick says that there's no point in calling the Resistance, they'll just make a lot of noise and make it harder for him to search for anything. He says that he'll just check it out himself. Nick says that if there's a Death Egg robot there, that it could be trouble for him to take on himself. He says that if Cream comes, then Gemerald is going to need to come too. Vanilla sighs and says, "Fine, but so help me, Nick the Wolf. If my daughter comes back with so much of a scratch, you're going to face something scarier than a Death Egg robot." Nick gulps and says that he understands and asks Gemerald to help him watch Cream for him. We start level 3, Nick the Wolf skating through the city with several Death Egg robots in front of him. Nick asks for Cream to stay behind him and call for help if she needs it. Cream says that there are quite a lot of bad guys around the city, to which Nick says that there are more than he expected, but mostly concerned about the Death Egg robots. Cream says that she's got an idea. She tells Gemerald to bond with one of these big robots. Nick says that this is why he brought Cream with him. She's able to come up with good ideas. Gemerald bonds with the Death Egg robot and starts to destroy as many mechs as possible. The rest of the level progresses as normal, except at the end, when Gemerald's Death Egg robot gets shot by another Death Egg robot. Nick tells Gemerald to bail. Gemerald demerges with the Death Egg robot, and Nick says that he'll take on the other one. We get into a QTE, where Nick launches himself off the walls before jumping at the eye of a Death Egg robot and smashes through it. Afterwards, Cream grabs him before he hits the ground, and Nick thanks Cream for the save. He lands and says that they've got a little ways to go now, as Nick reaches the goal and ends the level. The next level appears, a boss level titled Level 4, Boss vs. Chaos. As you click on it, we open into a cutscene. We see Nick, Cream, and Gemerald wander into the same area where Tails met up with classic Sonic in the main game. In this area, Nick wanders around and says that this is where the distortion happened, but asks why something like this would happen here. Gemerald suddenly says that he's detecting a massive power source nearby, fairly similar to Eggman's new power source, in that with some precision of usage, they could have brought someone here to this time and spot, sort of like an anchor or a beacon. Nick says that that makes sense, but asks where that power source would boom. Suddenly the three of them are attacked. Someone appears in the distance with a blue gemstone in the cup of their glove. The gemstone is blue with black stripes on it. Nick gets a look at it and says that that's not a good thing to see. The person holding the gemstone steps into full view, revealing that they're a red poodle with leather jacket and shorts. He laughs and tells the three of them that he was hoping for Nick the Wolf to appear before his space-time distortion, ready for a fight. Nick asks who this guy is, and he responds saying that his name is Crimson, and that he recently came into contact with a stone that can help him shake the world. But right now, he'd like to test how strong they really are. Nick tells Cream and Gemerald to stay back and that he has this guy. Cream and Gemerald get out of there as Nick begins to fight Crimson, but loses badly. Even Chaos' stab gets reflected. Nick pants and Crimson says that he's disappointed, saying, "Really? This is all you have? I barely broke a sweat." "I know. Perhaps you'll rise to the occasion if I give you a bigger challenge." Crimson floats upwards and shoots a ball of blue light straight into the air. It explodes in a wave of blue light. Suddenly, water spouts from every possible source. Crimson smiles as the streets quickly start to flood. Nick jumps to the top of the building, and suddenly a giant monster rises out of the water. It's perfect chaos. Knuckles calls Nick, saying that there's trouble in the city. Perfect chaos is flooding everything, and most of their forces are off the Death Egg to go rescue Sonic. Nick says that he sees it and will deal with it. Suddenly, Crimson teleports over the now flooded street. He tells Nick, "That is perfect chaos. He obeys my every command right now. Consider this your new test. Either you pass or you fail." He teleports again, and Nick says that he doesn't have much choice here. We get into the boss fight against Chaos. This fight has two phases essentially. The first, you rush to Perfect Chaos' brain by jumping off walls or rushing through him like Sonic Generations. After 2 hits on the brain, Chaos reverts down to Chaos 6, starting phase 2. Nick notices that Chaos got smaller, and you have to keep bringing Chaos down until he's Chaos 0. And then you can hit him again and defeat him, winning the boss battle. We get a cutscene of Nick landing on his feet, and Crimson teleports above him. Nick asks Crimson if he's impressed yet, and Crimson says that Nick passed the test, no matter how badly he did. Crimson teleports away with Nick saying that he was definitely impressed. We get a dialogue section where Nick the Wolf says that he's disappointed that Crimson got away, but glad that they're all safe. He says that they should go back home for now. Cream and Gemerald agree. We see the next level appear on the map, titled Level 5, Mystic Jungle, Flaming Rave. As you click on the level, dialogue starts. Nick asks Gemerald if his analysis of power source has been completed. Gemerald says that he finished it, and has completed his global scan for similar power sources. Nick thanks him and asks where it is. Gemerald says that there are 2 of these power sources out there. Nick asks which one is closer, and Gemerald says that it's in Mystic Jungle. Nick tells Cream that he's not going to be taking her with him this time. Vanilla sighs with relief, and Cream says that she understands and wishes him luck. The dialogue stops, and you're now able to start the level. We start the next level during the day in Mystic Jungle, as Nick sees that the forest is completely on fire. Nick asks Knuckles what's going on, and he says that there's a big battle going on right now, and he was hoping to take Mystic Jungle soon. Nick says that it's going to be impossible to find what he needs in the forest while it's burning down. Knuckles asks what Nick's looking for, and Nick says that he's looking for a funky-looking sapphire. Knuckles says that he thinks he knows what Nick is talking about, but wants help in the battle first. Nick continues through the level, and a little further, Knuckles tells Nick that he's done great to force back Eggman's forces. Knuckles says that their forces sighted a female cat with a blue sword. Nick thanks Knuckles and says that that might be a good lead. Nick continues through the level a little further when suddenly he encounters the same snake from Sonic's section of the level. Nick says that this isn't good, the fire must be aggravating him. We enter a QTE where Nick notices a dam. He jumps up to it and you have to break open the dam, forcing the snake to fall back and putting out a good amount of the fires in the forest just before Nick reaches the goal. A new level appears titled Level 6, Mystic Jungle vs. Shadow. As you click on it, we get a conversation section between Nick and Knuckles. Knuckles thanks him and says that who he's looking for is spotted just up ahead of him. Nick thanks Knuckles, and we start the level. Upon entering the level, a cutscene starts up where Nick the Wolf is speeding through the jungle when suddenly a blue cat walks out in front of him. Nick panics and stops. He says hello, and she smiles before drawing her sword. She says that he must be the wolf that she's heard so much about. The cat says her name is Sarah. She says that she was hoping she'd get the chance to face him. Nick notices that on the pommel of her sword is something bearing a resemblance to the sapphire he saw before. Nick says that he's gonna need that sword, and Sarah smiles before saying that he's gonna have to come take it. The 2 of them fight, and Nick loses. Sarah says that he is not worth her time. She lifts up her sword, and the gem on the pommel shines. Suddenly, Shadow the Hedgehog appears in front of her. She tells the Shadow clone to take care of Nick. Nick says, "Shadow, huh? I can take Shadow." However, something is different. When Shadow runs towards Nick, he hits the water on something like a manta ray. Nick says, "That's creative." The 2 of them rush towards each other, and the battle is about to begin. In this fight, you go up against Shadow, but unlike in most cases, this time he has his Doom powers. All of them except for Doom wings, for now at least. Nick tells Sarah that this version of Shadow she created was very creative, but she says that that's not how the Shadow Sapphire works. It can create any one being, and recreate their powers from any time. Nick asks when Shadow was ever able to do any of this. When you're about halfway through his boss bar, Shadow kneels on the ground, and Nick tells Shadow that it's over, when suddenly wings sprout from his back, and Shadow flies up. In this part of the fight, Nick cannot damage Shadow until he attacks a little bit. After that, the wings glitch out of existence, with Sarah saying that her clone is too much for the Sapphire. At this point, you can attack Shadow. When you near dooming Shadow's final bit of health, Shadow appears in front of him again. Nick says that this guy is too much, when suddenly another Shadow teleports in front of the clone and kicks him in the face, before Shadow teleports to Nick's side. Nick asks if this Shadow is the real deal. He nods and says that these powers from his past are formidable. Nick says that in that case, the two of them should work together this one time. Shadow nods, and the two of them double boost to defeat the Shadow clone, destroying the clone, ending the stage with both Nick and Shadow on the goal screen. We get a really short cutscene, with Nick saying that that was a fun fight, but he's gotta go grab. He looks over and notices that Sarah is gone. We get a conversation between Nick and Shadow, where Shadow says that he'll be leaving now, but Nick stops him, saying that there's no way, because he's got some questions. Shadow seems a bit annoyed, and then tells him to go ahead. Nick asks him about the powers, and Shadow says that those powers are something he could do in the past because of the Black Arms, but he hasn't been able to do it for some time. Nick says that that means that the gem Sarah was using can recreate a person looking into their history. Shadow nods, saying that that's kind of concerning. Nick then also asks what Shadow was doing working with Eggman. Shadow explains that he isn't working with Eggman and that it's an illusion created by Eggman's new power source, the Phantom Ruby. Nick says that he's going to tell the Resistance about this, and Shadow says that that's going to be fairly difficult with them thinking that he's an enemy right now. Nick says that since Sonic is back with them, that Shadow shouldn't have this problem anymore. Shadow says that if that's the case, he'll wait for a Phantom copy to fight, where he can meet up with Sonic and explain everything. Nick says that he could just tell Knuckles what's going on, but Shadow says, "No, I'll do things my way." Nick says that he wishes Shadow luck. He leaves, and Nick says that that doesn't seem to give him any leads on these Shadow Sapphires, so he'll probably just head back to Cream and Vanilla's place. We see a new level appear, Level 7, Metropolis, Big Wave Escape. As you click on it, a conversation between Nick and Knuckles starts, with Nick saying, "An attack on Eggman's HQ? I'm in." Knuckles says that they're about to get started, so if he wants to get in on this, he'd better hurry. When you start the level, we see a bunch of infinite Colossuses, and Nick radios Knuckles, saying that this is an attack to slaughtering of their own troops. Knuckles says that he knows, and their troops are pulling out right now. He asks Nick if he can help them cover their escape. Nick agrees and says that he'll direct Eggman's forces. Halfway through the level, Nick says, "Yeah, look at me, I'm interesting, right?" Knuckles radios in, saying that that's just sad to say, but most of their forces are out of there. However, a Colossus right in front of him is going to cause a ton of trouble. Nick says that he'll take care of it. During a QTE, Nick destroys the Colossus and finishes the level, saying that that could have gone much better. A new level appears on the map, labeled Level 9, versus Shadow Avatars. As you click the level, you get a conversation between Nick and Knuckles, where Nick says that their forces are clear to escape, and Knuckles says that that's great because a whole new problem has sprouted. Apparently, the Phantom Ruby is creating illusions of their own forces, so they can't even tell who's who. Nick tells Knuckles to get all of their forces out on the double, and he'll take care of the Shadow clones. As you begin the level, a cutscene starts where Nick helps people escape. Nick says that he's helped as many people as he could find, when suddenly he senses an attack and absorbs it in his flame band. Knuckles asks what's happening, and Nick says that he's found another problem. He looks before a shadow version of the Avatar. Nick says that this is really bad. Knuckles tells Nick to take care of it, and Nick says that that's easy for him to say. You begin the boss fight against an Avatar with a Burst Wispin, then a different Avatar with a Drill Wispin, then Cube, then Asteroid, then Lightning, then Hover, then finally Void. When you finish these dark Avatars off, Nick stomps on the Shadow Particles, finishing the boss fight. After the fight, a new cutscene starts, where Crimson and Sarah both teleport behind Nick. Crimson says that Nick has done well against their little challenge, but this time they've decided to stop testing him. The two of them attack when suddenly Nick is saved. He looks over surprised and he sees that Classic Sonic is here to help. Nick says hi and Classic Sonic just nods to him. Crimson and Sarah ask what's going on, and Nick says that this battle will soon be over with Sonic by his side. Sarah tells Crimson that she told him that time-space rift for a second Shadow Sapphire was a bad idea. Nick asks Classic Sonic if he's ready to go. The two of them work together to make their escape. We get a conversation between Nick and Classic Sonic. Nick thanks him, saying that that was close, and that he's got to figure out a way to deal with those two. Nick tells Classic Sonic that they should be fine for now, and that they should meet up with the rest of the forces. We see a new level appear on the map, titled Level 9, Green Hill, Industrial Zone. As you click on it, a conversation between Nick and Knuckles starts. Nick asks what his mission today is, and Knuckles says that he was hoping to get close to taking Green Hill today, but his forces are too thin spread after Operation Big Wave. Nick says that he can back up the remaining forces in Green Hill, and that Knuckles doesn't have to worry. Going through the level, you destroy a bunch of badniks, and Nick radios into the remaining forces, asking how the battle's going. The forces say that they're starting to push Eggman back to a stalemate, thanks to his factory being down. Nick tells the troops to push their advantages where they can, but fall back to a standstill if things get dicey. Later in the level, Nick tells Knuckles that their forces were pushed to a standstill. Knuckles says that's better than nothing. They can take Green Hill tomorrow. The level continues a little longer when Knuckles radios in telling Nick that things have calmed down for now, and that they should meet up with the rest of the troops as they reach the goal. Ending the level. A new level appears on the map, titled Level 10 vs. Crimson. As you click on it, a conversation section begins where Nick radios into the troops taking Green Hill. Nick asks if they're safe, and the leader says that they're in a good spot for now when suddenly Crimson joins into the conversation. And the troop leader asks who this is. Nick says that they're powerful. Crimson says that he's cut communication and tells Nick that their fun is over, and that he's ending things here. This begins a boss fight with Crimson, who says that taking over the world will be so much easier with Nick out of the picture. Crimson will fire beams of energy at you as you attack him. About halfway through his health, Crimson will say that Nick has gotten stronger, and Nick says that he's always getting stronger and better. At the end of the fight, you use a triple target Chaos Fist to defeat Crimson with a quick time event. Crimson floats back and seems just slightly phased. We get a cutscene. Crimson floats up, saying that Nick has grown stronger, but is still not even a challenge. Crimson fires a super powerful attack at Nick, but he blocks it using Chaos Shield. Nick notices that the shield isn't cracked at all. Crimson asks how this is possible, when suddenly he gets shot by what seems like regular Wispin shots. Nick hears a few battle cries, and then he sees that he's getting backed up by the Resistance forces. Their captain runs up to Nick and helps him to his feet before Crimson says that this isn't worth the trouble. He teleports away. Nick thanks the captain and says that he wishes there was some way to... Someone shouts, saying that some power was left in the ground, in some sort of residue. Nick rushes over and gets a look. He puts a small sample of it in a vial and says that that's going to be helpful. We see a new level appear on the map, titled Level 11, Chemical Plant, Cold Sea. As you click on the level, we see a conversation between Nick, Gemerald, Cream, and Vanilla. Nick asks Gemerald if he's gotten any new data on this stuff from Green Hill. Gemerald says that he hasn't been able to identify the energy. Nick says that he knows it's called a Shadow Sapphire, but has no idea how it works. Cream says that she wishes Gemerald's data would be able to do a good enough job at learning what this is, but maybe there's somewhere else they could learn. Nick says that if Gemerald can't figure it out, they might be able to go to Eggman's chemical plant and get an accurate analysis. Vanilla asks Nick if he's needed anywhere today, and Nick says that Knuckles is busy with some big operation to destroy the Death Egg, so he's good to do what he wants today. Cream wishes Nick luck as you start the next level. When you start the level, Nick notices that there's a small amount of fighting going on around the chemical plant. He radios Knuckles and asks what's going on. Knuckles tells Nick that he sent whatever forces he could to the chemical plant to help Sonic take it, but they're starting to struggle. Knuckles says that he's about to send Sonic to help, and Nick tells Knuckles to keep Sonic on task and that he's got the rest of it. A bit of the way through the level, Knuckles says that he's doing great when suddenly a giant Zavok rises out of the sea. Nick says that that's a problem, and Knuckles tells Nick that he'll get Sonic to help out with it. Nick says, "No, this mission is too important. I've got Zavok." Nick goes over to the Colossal Zavok and says that this is definitely the Shadow Sapphire. He better take care of it quickly. Nick takes care of the giant Shadow Sapphire Zavok in a QTE, and Knuckles radios into him, telling him that they're in a good spot to take the chemical plant now. Nick says that that's what he does, and ends the level. We see a new level appear on the map, titled Level 11 versus Sarah. As you click on the level, a conversation begins where Nick says that he's found an analyzer to learn everything he needs to learn about the Shadow Sapphire, and what it can do. Sarah joins the conversation and says that it's cute that he's trying to learn what he can about them, but it's about to be over really quick for him. Nick tells Sarah that he thought the giant Zavok strategy was a bit aggressive in Crimson. Sarah tells Nick that she'll be taking him down and then take over the world with Crimson's help later. We start the boss fight against Sarah on a black sand beach. Sarah will use blue slashes with her sword to try and fight Nick, but as he locks onto her, if he tries to attack, she'll dodge. Unless you get a triple lock-on, you won't be able to hit her. About halfway through the level, she says that it might make things a little harder for him if she goes invisible. However, you can still use Nick's Spidey Sense, or Ultra Sense as I call it, to find her. After she attacks enough times, you'll lock onto her and land a blow. At the end of the level, we get a QTE where you can get a triple lock on Sarah, and Nick uses his Chaos Fist to double skip her across the sea, ending the fight. We get a conversation after the level where Nick says that that was a cakewalk. Sarah rejoins the conversation, saying that it isn't over, and she'll take him on with Crimson's help next time. He doesn't stand a chance. Nick says that the analyzer had better have figured something out now. He says that the Shadow Sapphire seems to only have enough power to create shadow copies of other people by looking into their history and learning what they can, essentially allowing them to use powers from their past. Nick says that that's probably one of the most fanfiction-y-esque things that he's ever seen, but he likes fanfiction, so can't really judge. He says that it appears that the Shadow Sapphires are only able to summon one shadow copy at a time. He says that that's mostly unhelpful since they tend to fight him by themselves, but as he keeps looking into it, he learns that they have a more specific weakness. He learns that the Shadow Sapphires can't break his Chaos Shield. They can't even crack it. That allows them to keep absorbing energy and redirect it back at Crimson and Sarah. He also learns that it's a soft stone, meaning the Sapphires can break pretty easily. Nick says that he'll keep that in mind the next time he sees Crimson and Sarah. We see a new level on the map, titled Level 13, Eggman Empire Fortress, Wasteland Borders. As you click on the level, a conversation between Nick and Knuckles begins, with Nick saying that he's sorry he's late to the party, and asks what he's missed. Knuckles responds saying that there was a bit of a hiccup. Infinite tried to drop the sun on them. Nick asks if they're alright, and Knuckles says that they're fine now, and that it's been taken care of. He also mentions that Sonic has defeated Infinite, and that they're trying to find a way into the central tower. Nick says that it sounds like things are going pretty smoothly, but he'll drop by just in case. At the beginning, Nick says that Knuckles said things are going well, but for now, it looks like there's a few issues ahead of him. He says that he'll thin the crowd as much as possible. At the end of the level, Nick gets a call from Amy, saying that Sonic has just entered the central tower and is working his way down to the reactor to destroy the Phantom Ruby's power source, once and for all. Nick says that that's great, and he's almost to the main battle. Nick passes the goal and ends the level, as you see Crimson and Sarah floating above, waiting to attack. A new level appears on the map, titled Level 14 versus Crimson and Sarah. When you click the level, you don't get a conversation, and the cutscene just begins. Nick is skating towards the central tower when suddenly he's stopped by Crimson and Sarah. Nick seems ready to fight with the information he learned, but suddenly the ground shakes. and Nick the Wolf looks off into the distance, and on the other side of the central tower is a giant Death Egg robot, the one you fight at the end of this main campaign in Sonic Forces. Nick says that he doesn't have time to deal with Crimson and Sarah, and that he's gonna help his friends. Crimson, however, stops him, saying that this is Nick's final hour, and that if he wants to help his friends, he'll have to deal with him first. Nick frowns and says that they're gonna be sorry when he's through with them. Sarah says that he's the one who's gonna be sorry for what he did yesterday. Crimson says that this is the end of the line, and Nick should give up now. His friends are doomed. Nick says that his friends will be alright, however, giving up isn't really his thing. Crimson blasts Nick, and when he gets up, Nick says, "Knock me down all you want, but I'll just keep getting back up, as long as my heart is beating." Crimson says that that can be stopped as the cutscene fades and the final boss begins. You start the final boss just fighting Crimson in the dead wastelands around the Eggman Central Tower. This is essentially the same as the way you fought him last time. However, you'll be able to charge up a lock to do extra damage. Crimson tells Nick that this is going to be child's play defeating him now that he's all on his own. No interruptions. Nick, however, says that he knows his shield won't break against Crimson's attacks. Crimson says that that's very interesting, but it's useless information for him. After getting Crimson down to half health, Sarah will jump into the battle, and says that she'll take him down from here. She fights similarly to the last time, but says that he's going down for good. Nick says that that's not happening, and he'll take her down every time. Sarah tells Nick to try and stop her once she drives her sword through his heart. After getting Sarah down to half health, a cutscene starts where Crimson gets back into the fight and shoots a laser at Nick. He blocks it, but he's only got one shield. Suddenly, Sarah starts to charge up and attack behind him. Nick starts to get nervous, saying that he can't let his guard down against either of them. Crimson says that Nick should just give up. Nick says no, and Crimson asks why he can't just give up like most others would. Nick responds saying, "'Cause I'm Nick the Wolf." Chaos Shields! Suddenly, a second shield appears in Nick's other hand, and he uses it against Sarah's attack. She asks where that came from, and Nick rockets backwards with his shoes, and throws both of his shields, hitting them both. Back to the gameplay, we see two boss bars now, as Nick fights both Crimson and Sarah. However, Nick has a new ability, Chaos Shields. He'll block both opponents' ranged attacks, and then throw both shields at them, doing damage to both of them. Near the end of the fight, Nick says that he won't give up against any opponent. After the boss fight, we get a cutscene where Nick finishes fighting both Crimson and Sarah, breaking both of their Shadow Sapphires. The two of them say that they've been able to beat him so easily. They ask what changed, and Nick answers, saying he never gave up. He knew there would be a way to win. We start a conversation segment where Cream asks what happened to them next, and Nick says that the Resistance has taken them to a prison for a while. However, now that the war is over, he thinks he'll take a break after things calm down. Vanilla thanks Nick for helping keep them safe. Nick says that he didn't do much. Nick tells them that this was quite the time, but Amy asked him to join back up with the Resistance to take care of any remaining Eggman facilities. Cream thanks Nick and says goodbye to him, as Nick says that he's sure they'll see each other again soon, as we fade to black, ending the story. Wow, that was very hard for me to record. Okay, well, either way, thank you guys for watching this video. It meant quite a lot to me to finally have made this, and to finally finish it a few weeks late and get it out a few weeks late. But, you know, it's fine. College is hard. If you enjoyed this video, guys, remember to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this video with everyone you know and love, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!